The scene I've chosen is from the film Single White Female, directed and produced by Barbet Schroeder, based on the book SWF Seek Same by John Lutz. The film starred Bridget Fonda and Jennifer Jason Leigh. The score and music was by Howard Shaw. Cinematography was Luciano Tovoli, and it was edited by Lee Percy. Now we're going to take a look at the scene, and afterwards I will deconstruct its shots and audio cues, and then I will further deconstruct this piece by talking about its edit, grade, and other things that make it such a great thriller scene.
Please. I'm not like your sister, Henny. Not anymore. I'm like you now. I'll kill you. Get off him! Stay inside!
The technical specifications of Single White Female are as follows. It ran for 1 hour and 47 minutes. The sound mix was Dolby. Colour was obviously Colour Technicolor. Aspect ratio was 1.85 to 1. The camera was Panavision cameras and lenses. Negative format with 35mm along with the printed film format of 35mm, and the cinematographic process was spherical. All of these are very typical to films of the 90s. Even though the scene I've chosen lasts barely longer than a minute, it is comprised of 34 separate cuts, the longest of this only lasting 8.12 seconds, and that's the start of the catfight scene. The reason for this is to build up the intensity of the action that is happening all around in this scene. It's divided separately between reaction and action between the two main characters. As you can see on this timeline, at the start of the piece, there are longer clips. During the middle, there are very, very quick succession of jump cuts, flash shots, no fades are used at all. And then towards the end, there is again longer clips. Also, if you look at the clip length in relation to the sound, the peaks of the sound are when the action starts to begin, and then the sound continues all the way through to be at quite a high level. But I'll get onto that later. I feel the audio could be split into 3 very separate categories, but with 7 sections. At the start, again, the build-up, quite quiet in the background, your attention is drawn to what's going on the screen, then bam, the sound peaks, and that's where the action really kicks off during the fight scene. Then come the subsections, which is during the vocals, where names are shouted, things are called out, you hear all the actual foley of the head beating, and then again, at the end, it's about more of the escape and the feeling of urgency. I feel that the editing in Single White Female is typical of that of many thrillers of the 90s. Another film with similar editing patterns is Copycat with Sigourney Weaver. There is a distinct and obvious pattern with the editing of Single White Female. All reaction shots are short and to the point, to add speed and a real-time element to the piece. At the start of the scene, the shots seem longer and more drawn out. This is to build tension and establish what is yet to come. This is apparent during the first major part of the fight scene, making the audience aware of how gruesome and intense it's going to be due to its longevity compared to the other shots. All the action is made more urgent by the frequent use of jump cuts, making the viewer of the scene not able to feel comfortable with the flow of the action, adding the sense of panic and urgency which you'd expect. There is, however, a very typical system that is used here, such as a slow rise of action, the introduction it being very slow, sedate. Then there is a peak, which is quite erratic, swift movement, swift cuts, different shots, different pieces of action, slashes, attacks. This then slows down again to the decline in the resolution and then leading again to the escape, which peaks. The grade of this piece is very dull, with beige and blue being the main components of colour. However, what I do find very interesting and effective is the way that the entire scene has flashes of moonlight, which is exaggerated to highlight certain key points, such as at 20 seconds in when the enhanced moonlight shines off the shard of glass in which is about to be used as a weapon. The part of the scene in which I think the exaggerated moonlight is effective the most is at the beginning of the fight at 8 seconds in. As they move across the room, different parts of the actors are highlighted, and the whites are blown out to distortion, giving a lens flare effect. I feel that this dramatises the actors' movements, and although this cut is only 2 seconds long, I do believe it is one of the most powerful of the piece. Although everything, as I said before, is a very dull beige and blue tone, the already injured male is wearing bright red. Now, could this have been to tell the audience that he's already injured and is separate from the two females who are meant to be as one? Maybe, but I guess that's open to audience interpretation. There is a constant orchestral score in the background, which intensifies with the action of the piece. This adds atmosphere and drama, building the tension. The Foley is mainly comprised of smashing glass, kicking, punching, general fight struggles, groans, and this is typical of any fight scene. There is one key point within the vocal aspect of the audio, and that is the sentence, "I'm like you now," which is one of the film's most famous quotes. Please note that the orchestral score drops slightly here to make this more apparent and obvious to the viewer. Also, note the continuity error when the name Ellie is shouted, but no mouth movement is visible. Not many special effects were used in this film at all. Note even at the beginning of the scene when the slash occurred, there was no blood, it was just acted that way. However, when the gun is fired, you do see blood appear on the arm of Ellie. Now, although this doesn't seem as much of a special effect, as in there's no flying books anywhere, this is definitely a very cleverly done thing as it looks realistic. And it isn't too intrusive to the storyline, it just complements it and makes sense. Now, I don't know if you've noticed with the examples of the shots I've used, but most of them last no longer than 1 second, or literally around the 1 second or just under mark. Now, that is a very distinct pattern throughout this piece. Overall, this scene screams desperation to me and urgency. It really shows that this is the peak of the film, the time when both characters have come to that very final climax, and that is why I've chosen this scene as one of my favourite and best thriller scenes, especially for the 90s. Thank you very much for listening to my brief analysis and breakdown of Single White Female. I've been Christopher James Cowton.